There we go. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Good morning, Lauren. This is a day after, but happy beginning of spring. Yesterday was the first day of spring, and today I'm in the middle of a winter storm. So I think that's, typical of life, one side and then the other at the same time, right? But we are officially entering spring. So welcome to that.
Well, then all the displays I'm seeing like at Target and other stores kind of fit in with what's going on then.
Now,
It's not too early.
I was going to mention, I know last week was really popular having Clarissa on with the QuickBooks. I know we had a ton of questions in the chat. So I immediately reached out. I'm going to get her back on the show. We're going to pick up the conversation. I know that was a very popular one. So we'll go ahead. In fact, the last couple of shows, I know, and we say this all the time, everyone seems to really love our shows, which I'm going to hand it over to Lauren, but I want to say hello to the frequent flyers that are there with us every week. Thank you so much for being part of the show. And if you're new to the show, welcome to Small Biz Talk. So Lauren, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you to get us started here.
Okay, perfect. Just want to say a quick shout out to Emma. Good morning to you. I've got the chat going, so you can pop in there if you'd like. Oh, there we go. All right, Lori, give me a couple of seconds. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Here we go.
With Emma in the frequent flyer category. We got to get that girl on again. Don't you think so?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Having Emma on, that's for sure.
Maybe in April.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let me dive into it so that we can get to the meat of the show, which is, of course, our favorite Lori. So really quickly, my name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, our services are at no cost to those businesses because tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. So the taxes you pay have allowed us to offer free resources to all of you. For the Los Angeles area, which is the network that we actually represent, we service not just Los Angeles, but Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. So if you are within any of those counties, please be sure to get in contact with us. We have tons of resources for you. If you take a look at the map in front of you, you'll see we have locations in Camarillo, Santa Clarita, all the way over to Pasadena and Laverne, all the way throughout Los Angeles, as well as the South Bay, and then down into Long Beach. Now, here's the good part. Oh, let me go back. Sorry. I'm trigger happy, I guess, this morning. As it relates to getting in contact with us, you'll want to do so because we offer no cost business advising. And so you're able to sit one-on-one with one of our business experts. You might even get a chance to sit with our favorite Guru of all members, Miss Lori Williams, but you're able to sit with her as well as colleagues of hers that have expertise in a range of varieties. So we're talking about marketing. If you want some help with social media strategy or implementation, if you are looking to create a business plan because you want to start a business, or if you're looking to grow your business, you can sit with one of our experts. You can also gain some really great information through our virtual trainings. And so those are comprehensive workshops to help your business adapt and grow and start, like I just mentioned, because we have tons of webinars as it relates to beginning a business, looking at finances, you name it. Honestly, we've got it. So please be sure to get in contact with us today for the LA area. For LA, as well as the Santa Barbara and Ventura counties, go ahead and give us a call, 866-588-7232, or you can go online at smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have reached us and you're outside of our network, please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. So Lori, I'm going to go ahead and quickly stop my screen share, but I did want to say really quickly some quick housekeeping. Please be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. Again, questions into the Q&A. You'll see our chat's already going. So chat's going to be reserved for any links and information that Lori would like to share with you. Sometimes I also share notes from our discussion. And then again, questions into the Q&A. And we want to keep those on topic so that we can keep the show going. All right. Thank you so much. Lori, I'm going to throw it back over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much and welcome everybody again to the show. So I have just a quick few slides I'm going to go through today, and Lauren's going to put all of the information into the chat like she mentioned. I know the last couple of weeks I've been giving tax tips. These are still hot items as everybody's kind of looking at their taxes right now, so I decided to include them. Just a little heads up on the business deduction of the home office as well as business use of car. IRS has very specific rules to follow. These links will take you straight to the IRS where you can read up more on the topic. Now, many times if you're using a tax preparer, which you know that's something I always suggest that you do, they will help calculate these for you, but at least you can get an idea of how these calculations are done. Once again, I've received many questions about that. Now, once you have completed your tax return, I know I get questions continuously on how do I know when my refund is coming? So I wanted to go ahead and get this information out to you right away. This is how you check your refund. And I just got a message from the IRS that they have updated this tool. So it should be a little bit more user-friendly in case you've used it in the past. Upcoming classes, I've got the financial literacy series going on. Once again, very popular. These two upcoming sessions focus specifically on managerial accounting. Managerial accounting is the type of financial calculations that you do to understand if your company is performing correctly, which also answers questions like, am I selling at the right price? Is my cost of goods aligned with the company? Can I afford to hire someone? So often, if not almost always, this type of analysis is not done in small companies. And the purpose of these sessions is to give you an awareness that it exists and show you how to use some of the mathematical tools to have a better control of finances within your company. Now, the next webinar is the best legal structure and the tax advantages. I started doing this webinar because I saw so many people confused about legal structures, and I was getting these calls saying, I just went from a sole prop to an LLC to achieve a tax advantage, when in actuality, LLCs and sole props are taxed the same way. So what I wanted to do is have a basic class that went over the different structures and some of the tax advantages, and that give people a better understanding before you jump into some kind of legal structure that's not really what you perceive it to be. While I'm on the topic of things that are confusing, I want to bring up once again, and I'll hold a webinar coming up on this, and this has to do with the collection of sales tax. And just to shout out, because I always talk about things I see a lot during the week, I'm still hearing a lot of people that are using Shopify or other types of platforms that are not remitting the sales tax. So in other words, when you are with Amazon, if sales tax should be charged on the sale of products, both in California or outside of California, Amazon will add that tax. For Shopify, it does not, but a lot of times people believe it is because you can click a button and it's adding the sales tax to the invoice, but that's all it's doing. So when you think about sales tax, you want to think about three aspects. You want to think about the fact that you may have to add it to the invoice, meaning the sale is taxable and therefore it is collected. So collected is one. But then remitting to the government is another aspect. So you're collecting it on behalf of the government in essence, and then you're remitting to the government. So Shopify allows you to collect it, but it's not remitting it. So where people are getting confused, they're maybe collecting it, it's going in their bank account, but they don't have a seller's permit and they're not remitting it. And why I keep bringing this up is because it's a great concern that technically is considered fraud. You're collecting a sales tax without a license and keeping it in your bank account. And even if it's a mistake, you still come under these legal issues, okay? So I wanted to do another shout out. If you have any confusion on the sales tax, I'll have a webinar coming up about that as well. Now, to jump into today's show, medical asset management, what the company does is it buys, sells, develops, leases, and manages medical buildings. Since 1986, Jeff Cunningham has focused his career on building and managing successful medical properties. He has formed investment partnerships, acquired land, developed medical properties, orchestrated debt placement, managed successful leasing programs, brokered a countless number of tenant leases, and acted as both an asset and a property manager for clients. So you can see from my description, Jeff has a wide range of skills and expertise from being engaged in all of these activities over the time period of his company. Now, as far as his background, he has an MBA from USC, a BA from UCLA. He's a member of BOMA, the UCLA Real Estate Alumni Group, and USC Real Estate Alumni and Friends. He's a licensed real estate broker, and he has been a guest lecturer at USC School of Architect. Now, Jeff grew his company from startup to what it is today. Over the years, he has experienced hardships, challenges, and successes common to most growing companies. So why I asked Jeff on today is as you know, this focus has been bring people that have been at the game for a long time to come on and talk about things they experienced and what they learned along the way. So with that, Jeff, welcome to the show today. Glad to have you here.
Hi, Lori. How are you? You look wonderful.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. Okay, so everybody in the audience, full disclosure, we were talking before the show about how long I've known Jeff. It's 15 years. I think it could be even longer than that. But here's the background is, and I don't even know how this came about. Maybe you remember, but we'll get into the beginning of your company. But Jeff has been a longtime client of me in my private business. So I've been working with his company for 15 years, although he's doing well, standalone on his own. And I don't even know how we first met. But let's take audience even further back, Jeff. And I even don't know this story. When did the company begin and what prompted you to start it? I have a little bit of the background, but I don't even think I know the whole story.
Well, I'll be a little bit brief, but if people chat in, that's great. We can fill in some blanks. So my grandfather was a city councilman in Los Angeles during the 30s. Before that, he had been the kind of the founder of UCLA's campus, which is the new Westwood campus. And he built the first buildings on campus that everybody's heard of, Royce Hall and et cetera. And he left that after the war or during the war in 1940, and after the war started a planning business in real estate. So he did that until his untimely heart attack and death in the late 50s. And my father just jumped in, having no experience, and took on 95 cases before the city of developing property. So my whole life since birth, I've heard stories of how land was developed, how cities grew, how infrastructure was important. Granddad even worked for Bill Mulholland when they were stealing all the water rights up in the Owens Valley. So I have this long family history in California, 5th generation Californian. And so I always just kind of thought that was really fun. And I went to UCLA, got a history degree, decided to go work for Coldwell Banker and started as a rookie like everybody else and went through the training program, and that was a good experience. But I kind of realized it's a silly way to conduct this business because it's not holistic. You're just chasing one little lead at a time, trying to find one little deal. I highly recommend anyone who wants to go into business, watch Glenn Ross, a crazy, funny movie with a bunch of famous actors, Jack Lemmon, et cetera, about these land guys. And it really kind of focused me when I saw that movie 30 years ago. You know what? I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be dependent on someone else to figure out what I'm going to do, where I'm going to work, how I'm going to work, who I'm going to work for. So I went back to graduate school, figuring I can get a scholarship. My parents didn't have any money at the time. And so that worked. And at SC, I really learned a lot of basic business skills, business law, et cetera. So education is really a big part of where it goes. And I think because I double majored in history and economics at UCLA, I kind of got the history value out of how things happen, why they happen, and how to avoid those pitfalls as I was going through my career. So I took a job working for a developer as a half-time summer job, a summer internship, really. And I happen to know him from my church, which is a summer day camp that I operated when I was a younger kid in the Palisades, and that made that connection. So I got into the, boots on the ground very young, and built that 8-story medical building in downtown LA, the first project I ever built. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I just winged it, and, took advice from everyone and learned from the experience. And
Right.
so part of it is putting yourself in situations where you might be a little uncomfortable or going a little bit outside your layer of comfort zone, to try something new, but obviously learned a ton. So now I'm 30 years old and I'm working for a guy, and he's aging out. He's a really nice man. He's almost like my uncle. He just died a few years ago. But I kind of came to the conclusion that, I should start my own business because he's going to retire. Things are going to change. And I've always wanted to do something. So I branded myself as a medical asset management, just did a DBA. It was just a simple, sole proprietorship. And for about 6 or 7 years, that was great. And I started doing more medical deals because I picked this niche that nobody else wanted to focus on, which now today is very popular. But at the time, medical office was not something that, somebody aspired to. And so I had my own lane. And that was another decision I made, was to find a space where a small guy could be a big fish in a small pond, not a big fish or a little fish in a ginormous pond full of sharks, which is what the rest of the real estate industry kind of is. So that went well. And I ran into my buddy from grad school, who, Lori, Mitch Yankowitz, is my business partner. And I said, hey, I'm too busy. I got too much work. You hate your job in entertainment. He was executive VP of marketing for Fox International Pictures. He said, why don't you come work with me? You still have your license, right? He said, yeah. So I'm like, let's write a business plan and see where this goes. And so I showed him what I was doing and what I had in front of me and what I needed help with. And because of his marketing background and my kind of financial operations background, it was a natural fit. You didn't know us yet, Lori, but that's how we started. And there was 2 of us, and we had one building that I already had management on, and we had a client who was the owner of that who wanted to buy another one. So we bought that building, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And by 2001 or 2002, January 2002, we formalized a medical asset management partnership, my personal corporation, his personal corporation. So we're 50-50 partners today. Although, as you know, Lori, there was a little bump in the middle of that road.
Yeah. And we'll walk back and go through that. I think that I was just remembering something. When I first was introduced, I remembered how I got introduced to you. And it was an associate I knew from some bank who gave me your name. And I think, Jeff, and you'll tell me if I'm correct, the very first meeting was really to help you organize the company. That was when I know you specifically wanted to really start to grow the company. And you were looking at, I need an org chart. I need to know whether we need this person in this position or this person in this position. So as I look back at now, especially knowing what our audience thinks about a lot, you are going from just 2 people and kind of, growing as you go along to trying to have a plan, a strategy, saying, I want to grow. Pick it up from there, and you're going to have to introduce that it wasn't Mitch that we were talking with when I first met you then, because I know Mitch now, but I didn't know Mitch. And guys, this gets a little bit crazy, so you'll have to follow. So pick it up. You and Mitch first start the company, but I don't know Mitch then. I know Mitch now. You want to fill in the blanks, Jeff?
We had a third partner when I formed it. His name was Steve Miller, wonderful man, good, competent professional. He and his wife, she was in the business with him. Their company merged with us, and we brought in Mitch as a third partner, thinking a 3-legged chair is probably better because you got 2 partners that can vote. If one partner's going off the rails, it was all even. And, we all contributed a little bit of money just to have a starting working balance for the entity. It wasn't much.
And here's one part I'm going to interrupt you for just for a second to talk to the audience. Pay special attention to what Jeff's saying, because what I get calls on constantly, Jeff, is people are saying, I want to bring on a partner. Do I split equity? Do I do this? And I always try to explain to them, a partner is like a marriage. Take it seriously. Okay. I just wanted to interject that. Keep going, Jeff.
Oddly enough, it's kind of worse than a marriage. It does have differences, but it's very much like the DNA is very similar. So you know, it's always been my brand name, right? Medical Asset Management from 10 years before. I thought that was a good name. The first fight the three of us had before we even formed was, what are we going to call it? Is it going to be Miller, Cunningham, and Yankowitz? Is it going to be Cunningham, Miller? And I'm like, guys, nobody cares about our names. We're not a law firm. We need to have a brand that we push, and we all have the same shoulder on the back of the brand, and the brand is what we want people to know. And that was hard for Steve because he was a few years older and he'd been doing this with his wife and his, I don't know what kind of pillow talk they had, but I'm not sure, you know, they all agreed with that. But in the end, it worked out that we went that route. And I think that was a big move because it's really not about me. It's not about any of the partners or our employees, which are really independent contractors because they're all licensed real estate people. But, you know, it's about the brand. And if you have a brand and you have a concept and you have a business plan and a big picture, it can get you there. Well, that went fine for the first 3 or 4 years. We added a few more buildings and sold some properties, and we were all starting to make some money. And then we had one of the partners, Mitch, who had a really difficult divorce. And because of that, we had to buy him out. So buying Mitch out was, we thought, permanent. But Steve and I were running the company. And then we hit 2008, which was a big real estate crash and the financing crash. And Steve wanted to pare back our staff, of which we had like 4 at that time, 2 of us and 4 and an accounting lady. So he wanted to shut that down and just keep all the money for himself because he thought it was going to be really bad. And I said, no, we started this 8 years ago. I don't want to do it. Let's call Lori. So Lori came in. And we had a meeting, and this is the big punchline you wanted, Lori. We had a meeting, and I had already written out a buyout agreement. Lori thought, I'm a business, you know, consultant. You know, I'll put these guys back on track. She'd already been with us with a couple other appointments.
That Jeff called me up and said, Lori, or I think even Steve called me and said, Lori, we are just looking at some financial situations. We need a strategy meeting. So I want to point out to the audience, and Jeff doesn't say this, I went in blind. Now go back with what you had already written out that I was not aware of. Go ahead. Because guys, this is how to get into a partnership and out of a partnership. It's a very fascinating story. Go ahead, Jeff.
And I'm sure I'll miss some of the good parts, but at the end of the day, we talked for about 45 minutes in the conference room, and you were telling us you should think about this, you should think about that. Jeff, you have to consider Steve's point of view. Steve, you have to consider Jeff's point of view. She did a fabulous job, but what she didn't know was she was setting me up and I was setting her up during the conversation to make it obvious that we had different ideas. I was willing to push the brand, keep going, you know, take a little bit of cut in pay if need be to, you know, make this work. It's a partnership. So whatever revenue comes in, we split. So if revenue drops, that was okay. Steve had, you know, a wife and a bunch of dressage horses and a big mortgage and, you know, a lot of overhead. And he wasn't in that position. And he wanted to just gather all the, you know, close the doors on the castle and gather all the sheep inside. And I was like, no, I want to go out and farm. And, you know, I thought this, I had gone to graduate school different than him. I had seen business plans and looked at, and I had a history, you know, background and an econ degree. So I knew these cycles come, and you can come out of a cycle when it's at the bottom with a new business. There's less competition because the other stuff's already been washed away. So I'm thinking this is a chance for us to really step in and grow. And he's thinking, I just need to pay my bills. So at the end of the day, and there's other reasons, personality involvements and stuff, you know, it was difficult for him to see me always pushing him to go out and grow the business and not do it all by myself because we are partners. And Mitch was gone, so we didn't have the third voting leg, right? It was just 2 of us. And then we had the meeting. Lori did a great job, pretty much laid out what we needed to do, and she was correct and very helpful. But I had already written, and I was waiting for the right moment, this buyout offer. So I brought it out of my folio, laid it on the table in front of both of them. And Lori, you can explain from there what your reaction was.
Well, first of all, it was really a point I want to make to the audience that's so important is that when you're looking at a partner, you're bringing a partner on, many of you have this conversation, you have to really be clear that your vision is on, because just like when you have parents that don't get along and the children suffers, when the partners have varying views on anything, the business is not going to make it. And you go through tough times, you don't have a collective, cohesive leadership at the top. We all know what that looks like. And here, Jeff's a good example of somebody can be a partner for how long, but your views change. So you have to definitely go and sit down and talk about these things and determine what to do. Now, the interesting part is when Jeff handed the buyout, which I did not know he had the letter already in existence, both Steve and I were shocked because we weren't aware of it. And the thing that I have to say that I still laugh at today is Steve kind of was pushing it into the middle of the table, like to act like it didn't exist, right? And then he would go back and you would discuss something like it reminded me of a couple was arguing about the tube of toothpaste, right? And I kept pushing the paper back in front of him and going, well, I think we really need to discuss this. And then the paper would get pushed away again. And then and so this paper gets pushed around the table for a little bit, right? And then finally we got where we discussed it. And then it turned out to be a very amicable decision. I think there was some scotch that was involved in that or something, because I recall a bottle of alcohol being brought to the table, if I can remember correctly. But I think the key is that the conversation took place. The things that were hard to discuss were discussed. And that was the important part. And then the clincher was that Mitch was coming back into the scene. And this started a whole new phase. And the other thing I want to make sure the audience doesn't miss that you said, Jeff, is especially, with your signals, I've seen cycles come and go. We're right now through the cycle of COVID, possibly cycles of economic issues coming forward. So a lot of people in the audience are, can I say, scared, and I'm a big advocate of saying, don't let the fear engulf you, but let a strategy take you over. And what I liked about it is you said, coming out of a downfall, sometimes you can be positioned well with less competitors. So I just wanted to make sure we highlighted that special aspect, that why does a company what enables a company to be able to go through these cycles? Because Jeff, you've gone through cycles within the company, cycle within the economy. What do you think allows you to still be here standing and succeeding and growing?
I think it's just a desire to have a legacy. It goes back to my grandfather, my father. I'm the third generation. Cunningham was Stephen W. Cunningham and Associates, founded in 1954. That's my entity, corporate business entity that owns half of MAM. It has another account from before MAM, the high rise that I built downtown that's still just with my company. But Mitch and I have shared everything else since. No new business. I just kept one piece of old business for myself, which gave me a little stability too, because that building produces great revenue every year, management fees, leasing fees, construction work. And the owner is a wonderful guy. I've worked for his family for 33 years now, something like that. Officially a little longer, but under my ownership or operation of his building, that's it. And he now has 7 buildings. So he's just kept rolling forward the money and letting us buy the next building with the next cash out refinance. So the growth is a little bit organic and a little bit, elbow grease, finding new clients and pushing forward. Not sure if that's the question you were asking, but
no, it's true. I think, when you said it's a desire, also you had existing clients that you continued to work with and were also out building new ones. And this is where I'm going to go from this part, Jeff. So there's 2 aspects to it. One of the things that I think when Mitch came on board with you, that you two shared maybe more than you and Steve shared, neither right or wrong. Once again, we're talking visions, but Jeff, and I got to tell the audience this, Jeff loves to support other people. This is the thing about Jeff. He teaches his kids soccer. I mean, the thing is, you want somebody that you can go to and sit down and talk with. Jeff's the guy. He wants the people to work for him, to feel inspired, to grow. That's the, kind of book that Jeff is. So Jeff, you always wanted to bring on these people that a lot of them are independent contractors, as you mentioned, but have them still feel part of a family and grow and help them to meet their goals, and by that also achieving the company goals. Mitch shared that vision, but not to the degree you did. But you and Mitch have successfully kind of said, okay, Jeff, you get to do that. And I'm going to also do a little bit of it, but mostly over here. So there's two things here, Jeff. I'm going to say, first of all, how you and Mitch, I don't know whether you fell into it or what, but you share responsibilities respectfully about this much, but then you respectfully let each other have their own area of expertise. And then let's delve into you and your supporting of internal staff and everything you've gone through to find people, get rid of people, and all that. That's a whole lot. Let's just start unpacking it. How did you and Mitch come to this nice agreement in partnership duties and responsibilities? Any insights you can share with their audience when they're looking at how to collectively create partnership duties within their company?
I think it starts with a basic blind faith or belief that the other person is, on board. And you almost have to start that way. You got to be cup half full about your partner, because if you really are always nitpicking each other, it's the same thing in a marriage. If you think the other person should be doing something they're not doing and you just let it fester, it doesn't work. Now, Mitch and I have a very open dialogue. We have 5 different offices, but he'll be coming to this office today. We're together in El Segundo. It's kind of our main office, but we have an office in Long Beach and an office in Sherman Oaks and an office in downtown and an office in Tarzana. Forgetting one, but anyway, so we don't spend all our time together. We kind of divide and conquer. And that's been something that Mitch came up with that little, euphemism from back in the day. Because it really there's too many things going on for both of us to do all of them. We can't be looking over each other's shoulder all the time. Yeah, we share a lot of emails and, you know what the other guy's doing. And, sometimes I'll go to him and say, hey, I need you to help so-and-so. Like my daughter just started working for us a couple of years ago, which was a shock to me. But she came in and, she doesn't know, right? She needs training. She's brand new. So he took her under his wing and they've been working on how to do leasing, and I teach her operations, and finance, budgeting and stuff. So it didn't happen overnight that I became what people call a generalist, that I, like you in your intro said, I've done all these things. I sound like I'm 90 years old. I don't feel like I'm as old as you made me sound, but for one guy to do all that, it's not just me, it was the company. And you called it, earlier, and I'll get back to your specific point, but you said it's about, creating a culture. So one of the guys, Brock, one of our managers, said, hey, we should call it the Mammally. It's not the family, but it's the Mammally. So now everybody sends stuff like, to the Mammally, and there's emails to the group and stuff. We have a company party every year for just the 10 of us that work here. But we have about 50, 60 people because of, significant others and a lot of clients.
I remember those parties when I was in LA. I was always at those parties. Those were a lot.
You're still invited to those parties, but you're never in LA.
I know, you always do invite me. So here's a really good takeoff from where we're going, and that is the need, and this is something I talk about all the time, Jeff, the need to really vet out somebody before you bring them on the company, because what the smaller companies tend to do, Jeff, and you kind of been there many years ago, is they need somebody, so they just grab that first person and they don't want to take the time interviewing them, and they go, oh, but we resonated so well, you already know. And I can't emphasize this to them enough, especially when they're the company. They spend all the time training this person and it's not the right person. It hurts the company. So let's talk about the importance of vetting somebody properly before you bring them on, because you guys have been thorough in this aspect.
First of all, you were a huge help in that. You're our HR department, whether you like it or not. You should be on our website. But I think part of it, and this ties into all of what we were talking about so far, you have to decide if you're egocentric or exocentric. And if you as the owner are egocentric, it's not going to work. And maybe that's where Steve was at, and I was exocentric, wanting to grow and raise more young MAM staffers up and grow the company that way. And, he was thinking, I need to take care of me first, and then I'll worry about, where the company's going. So when you're hiring people, you got the same problem. You pointed it out. are you hiring someone because they're right for the job, because they are right for the company? Every resume looks great. You get these resumes, you talk to people, the first phone call. So you have to kind of develop in your hiring practice, which you helped with, Lori, and I probably expanded it since then. You have to kind of come up with like the 10 things that you want to find out from that person. You're not going to have a 4-hour interview. You're not going to, as a small company, go through layers of manager interviews and executive manager and HR. And, it's going to be like you and maybe one of your senior staff. So what I did, and I think you might have come up with this, I don't remember, Lori, I would have the person interview with us, and then I would have them go have lunch with someone else from the company.
Yep.
So they could get that person's perspective away from all of us, before or after they did their HR interview with you. And it gave them a perspective on what they were getting into. Because a lot of times people come and they're like, yep, I'm a manager. Yep, I'm a leasing person. Yep, I'm got financial background. Yeah, I know Excel. They know how to spell it, but they don't know how to run it. You never can tell in one interview. So when they get a chance to talk to an outside person, and obviously you're going to want to pick one of your better, other members of your company to represent your values in that meeting with that new hire prospect. But that was one thing I think you might have come up with that, Lori, was.
I did, and I'm going to expand just quickly for the audience on where I came up with that, because I recognize that if you have a bad hire, it can really throw you off. And when I was doing the turnarounds, that was not the time to have a bad hire. And what I realized in doing all the turnarounds is that when people left, like even if you had a good hire, when somebody left, they never left because they thought, oh, I didn't realize I had to work with Excel, or I didn't realize that the job entailed these hours. It was never about that. It was what I always called the good, bad, and ugly. Well, I didn't know the owner was kind of like that. I didn't know the manager's kind of like that. That's why people left. So what I did, and I did this in a company prior to yours, Jeff, is I had, so like Jeff said, somebody in a position within the company that could meet with the person. And when I did it, I was very formal, where I would bring the person we were interviewing into the room. I would bring the associate into the room, and I would announce to both of them, this is a private discussion. And I would turn to the person that is interviewing and I say, you may ask this person any questions about the company. And I encourage you to ask the good, bad, and ugly. What is the owner like? What's the manager like? What are the work hours like? Everything that could possibly make you mad down the road, I want you to ask. And I would turn to the employee and say, I want you to answer truthfully, because it's going to come out sooner or later. And I will never hear this statement, and I will never make my hiring decision based on anything within this conversation. And I would leave the room. And I found that made such a difference, because nobody then was shocked. They knew if they had to work excess hours. They knew if sometimes the manager did certain things. And so that, kind of full transparency is where I first came up with that whole concept. And that's when we employed it at your company. And a lot of it was me as an outsider meeting with the person to give you feedback, in that case, on what the person was actually like. So in this, even if it's just you hiring, it's always a good idea to take a second interview days down the road from a new perspective, if you have to have it just yourself. So take it from there, Jeff. I just wanted to give the audience some background on the strategy in that.
Yeah, and for anyone who's running a small business, me included, even today, I don't really know much about this person. Some friend's son wants a job, somebody. So like you said in the beginning, Lori, I really like coaching. I like 57 AYSO soccer teams, dozens of basketball teams. All my kids had dad as a coach for almost all of their teams, because they kept saying, Dad, you be the coach. And I think it's because I didn't focus on them. I focused on the team. And so when I interview someone, I want them to think about, are you going to be comfortable in this work environment? It's pretty self-driven. Small companies are. You need each employee to have a little bit of motivation for his own benefit, his own career, and you need a compensation plan that rewards them for taking advantage of their ideas and their things that they bring to the table. And we do that on purpose. No one here gets a salary. They all get a piece of each deal they work on. managers get half the income for the management fee. They get half the leasing fees. They get a third of the renewal fees. They get a piece of escrows when we buy and sell buildings or do refinances or do construction management. Like you said, we build buildings and I assign one of them to be in charge of it. And they get that experience like I did when I was a young kid walking around on 8 stories worth of steel in downtown LA, scared to death with a rope on me. So, hiring practices are difficult. I'm not going to say I'm good at it, but I've followed, some of the things that you brought up, Lori, and some of the things that I, intuitively felt were important. And I kind of came into it with a perspective of, do I want this person to join my family? Because my work is one of my families. And the other thing I'll point out is when I'm interviewing, I think about if this person makes a mistake, because they're all going to make mistakes, just like I do. They're all going to make mistakes. Am I going to be mad at them, or am I going to be okay with it and coach them to make sure they don't do it again? And some people are coachable and some people aren't. That's also an interesting issue about, who you hire. If you're bringing someone into a small business, you got to be flexible. They may be doing this today, but they may be doing this and that tomorrow. And you want to know if that person, is willing to grow. And if that person isn't willing to grow and isn't willing to learn and isn't willing to take some, benevolent coaching, then maybe they're not the right fit. Maybe they're just there for the money. And then you got to wonder, okay, I'm not going to get much, extra positive energy out of this. And we're at a point now where everyone in our company adds lots of positive energy. I send them an email at Christmas time and stuff during the holidays, just reminding them how much I appreciate them, which is kind of weird for a boss to say. It's like, is that woke? Is he allowed to say that? But I just do it because that's how I feel. And it's not a day-to-day thing that you run your emotions. Your business is run on your emotions, can't be, but you got to let out a little bit of that positive feeling for your staff because they need to know you care about them. It makes them care about you.
Well, at the end of the day, and I always say this, as much as I have been hardlined, and especially during my turnaround years, I know many of my clients, to their benefit, they saw it as always called me emotionless. You have no emotions because you have to go in and cut staff and stuff. But that's not true. At the end of the day, I do know that we are all people, and I always recognize that, which brings me to another one. And Jeff, I don't know, I'll be really amazed if you do remember me saying these words, because this was so long ago, but where I always say, okay, let's see if you remember, you can't kill the host.
Can't kill the host.
Yeah, do you remember me saying that a long time ago? I don't know.
A long time ago. It wasn't something we went over the years, but yes, I do remember that.
Long time ago. And you mentioned it just a minute ago, and what I would say from you can't kill the host, and Lauren, you can put that in the chat. People remember you can't kill the host. This is because in addition to all my background in business, I had 2 years in medical training in science, biology, and I did research at the time, right? My real young years. And we learned about parasites won't kill hosts because the host dies, the parasite, the whole thing. And so from my medical training, I recognized early on that when a company, if they have somebody that's just not working out, whether it's a partner or an employee or a vendor, right? We tend to, as humans, we get too emotionally hold on to them. We don't want to let them go instead of facing reality. Hey, you keep this person on, you're going to kill the host. And if the host dies, everybody dies. So that was the whole concept. And so I think one of the things that you and Mitch have done, especially over the last many years, is had to make some very hard decisions where you said, this person is just not working, and come to the conclusion you had to let them go. Jeff, any words you can tell, because you're the heart person, and I cannot get sometimes people to get rid of vendors and different things that are just no longer good for their company. How do you go about it and be okay with it when you know you have to make a hard decision in your company?
Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had to make one of those for 5 years or more. But over the years, yes, there's been half a dozen people that have come and gone. And usually, there's the corporate way, which, you're very good at, and you're used to big companies and turnarounds and cutting and all that. And there's my way, which is I kind of, work with them and say, this really isn't the right result. I mean, I'm sorry, but we need to talk this through. And sometimes that helps. And sometimes they have a whole side issue going on. One guy's mom was dying of cancer. Obviously, you cut him a ton of slack, and you let that go and then see if he comes back around. People have been working here and had a divorce, Mitch included, had to cut out my own partner to make that work because his world was falling apart. So how do I make that decision? I go with my gut. And I know that's not very out of the MBA book of business practice, but I go with my gut and decide, is this person here, are they hurting? Are they not able to perform their job because there's something blocking them? Or do they really just not care? And they're, like you said, they're just sucking off the host until eventually it withers. And I've found that, taking the time to work through it, even though it's difficult to have someone who's there and continuously causing disruption, you can't let it go on forever. But if you give them a chance, and I'm not saying like a corporation, 3 notices, here's your first notice, you better get better at this. Second notice, you just kind of have to work through it. And, Anthony Coons was a huge example of that. He had a horrible situation with his wife in a divorce, but he didn't feel comfortable enough to tell us why he was not functioning. And he got himself caught up in making excuses that became lies that became bigger than he could control, and it all fell apart. He's a wonderful man, and I wish him well, and I know he's doing well again. But at that moment in time, he was killing the host. And so we had to make that, bad decision. But, we didn't just do it the first day. We didn't just lose our mind and get mad and blow up. We pushed it as far as we could, supported, what he was missing or lacking, to make sure the company didn't have any negative effects, and eventually got to the point where he moved on. And that was hard. And that's what's happened with multiple people. And, hopefully it won't happen often, but it will at some point happen. It's inevitable. But being a small business, when you get rid of that person, now you're in the struggle of finding somebody new. So something I wanted to say earlier about hiring and also about this firing decision, you almost have to spend time recruiting new talent all the time.
Yeah.
Always have to keep an eye out for someone that you meet on a job, on a project, on a luncheon, on a seminar. We go to these annual real estate seminars for medical properties. We're going next month to Chicago. And, we look at all the people we meet there and gather business cards and throw them in your contacts. And someday when you need to find a manager because your manager's falling apart, you pull that, manager in your contacts and there's 12 people and you're like, I remember that guy. He was great. Let's call him, and you kind of have to prep, for losing someone. You almost want to have someone else ready to step in.
I think that's true for clients and for personnel and for managers. Just always know that what you have may not be in existence tomorrow and have a backup plan. Don't you think a bit, Jeff, staying in business and staying stable is always having a backup plan so you don't find yourself kind of on the edge with no thoughts of where to go?
Yeah. I mean, when you say a backup plan, that could be many things. That could be like closing down my small business and going to work for a big company.
Yeah.
My resume stand out where I could leave this business and get hired by, accounting firm or whatever business you're in. So that's always a good idea. I committed myself, whether it was everyone's gone and it's just me and I'm doing it all by myself again, like I did when I started, I would stay with that. I do not want to put myself in the position of saying, well, I could sell out the business and go work part-time, get a salary from the guy who buys me out and, just kind of collect a golden parachute sort of thing while I'm not really working hard for my own venture. Once you start a small business, which I assume all your radio listeners are those people, you kind of have to go in with both feet. If you leave one on the dock and one on your boat, you're probably not going to get there. You're not going to grow the way you want to. You're not going to feel committed. And another thing that I found, and this isn't something we've talked about much, Lori, but you have to have a good overall support network for yourself, because you as the manager if you're having difficulties at home in your personal life, if you're having, health issues with a son or a daughter that was born with a disease, and you're, distracted, you're not able to have those people help you do what you need to do, it's difficult. And the support network extends to friends, family, in-laws, it's a big, pool of people that everyone has in their life that they don't realize is part of the fabric of their life. But if each one of the people who has this opportunity to operate a small business, which admittedly tougher than having a salary job, but it's not a job, it's a career, it's like a lifestyle. And that was the whole point of how I structured our business and how we grew it, was people come here because they don't work 9 to 5. They work whenever they need to work. And it could be, 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. for a couple months because they got a big deal they're going to make money on. And then they go on a vacation and coast for a while. And so I try to lead by example. The one thing I think, Lori, is the owner of the business probably works harder than anyone else at his company.
Yep.
And you have to know that. You can't expect to own the business and have everybody else work harder than you, because they're going to feel like, well, I'm just working for the man and he's off playing golf. I encourage my people to take vacations and to take advantage of the benefits of the money they earn, which frankly is a little higher than they would earn with a salary job. Whereas here it's the family and it's your career and it's your last stop. You don't ever have to worry that you're going to have to move on from our company because you aged out or any of that. I have people working here that are my age or older. So it's finding that person who wants that lifestyle, and it maybe to some extent you're modeling it by how you live your life, and being patient is probably the hardest thing about my job, because I'd really like everybody to do things my way and get them done on my timeline. But I know that's not realistic. So I have to be patient about when they get things done and not care, not get upset that they had too many other jobs and couldn't get to the one I wanted, projects. So it's really we're a small entrepreneurial business. I'm not sure that all your small business people, they could be restaurant owners. A lot of those are very similar types of problems. I always tell our clients when I'm doing an introduction to our company for a new client meeting, I'm like, I'm the maitre d'. I don't own the restaurant. You own the restaurant. You own the building. I'm just coming to you saying, let me be your maitre d'. Let me raise your revenue. I'll bring in my cook, which is the property manager. I'll bring in my waiter, waitress, which is the leasing person. And all of the patrons who come to your building as tenants are really like customers coming to a restaurant. And we're serving them a new meal every month, and they're paying the bill every month. And we have to keep that process going. And you just need me to be that gatekeeper that keeps everyone happy and makes sure they get seated at a good table. And the owner has to buy into that and let us spend some of his money, because if your clients don't let you take care of them, they're squeezing you for dollars, then you can't really help that client.
That's very true. So we've got a little bit of time yet. Leslie from our audience asked an interesting question, and I'm going to kind of put it in my words. You've been in LA, your family's been in LA, you've been around this world, California, for decades, Jeff, decades, and you've seen a lot change. And she was saying, how have you seen LA change, and has it opened new doors or caused you to revise strategies? And I think this is a really fascinating question to somebody who's been in that area so long. And may I add, what do you see on the future? Are you hopeful? Are you excited? Do you think there's a lot of opportunities? And I think it's an interesting, not just from your longtime family background, but Jeff, you're dealing with people who are buying properties, big people that have money, investors. You're seeing then the medical doctors, you're seeing the staffing. You're getting quite a little glimpse into the economic conditions and future possibilities of your area. How does Jeff feel about the future of the area and business in general?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic about California. Obviously, California has more regulations and more taxes than almost any state you can name in the country. It also has the value of being California, having, all the old industries that people talk about. The military industry is still here. The entertainment industry is still here. The new startup companies are really not staying here. Even Tesla might move his plant, and he's already moved his batteries to Nevada, and people are going to Texas and moving out. So it's a little difficult. There'll be a little bit of cream at the top of the wealthiest who leave. One of my best friends just moved to Portugal. He sold his law firm and said, I'm going to go to Portugal while I can still walk and, travel. And, he's raised his kids. So now he's ready to go enjoy another 20 years. I'm going to spend the next 20 years sitting at this desk, working here, waiting for my daughter and eventually my son to graduate next year and, coach them up so that they can be the fourth generation. But that's me. California, to answer your question, still has, maybe they're not paved with gold, but it still has tons of opportunity. There's a lot of transition, and in transition, there's change, and change creates opportunity. Sometimes it feels negative. Sometimes you can get a little down. You write that check on April 15th and you feel like California owns half your, family value. Difficult, but it is also a very vibrant community. Yes, we have homeless. Yes, we have traffic. Yes, we have no more smog. We got rid of that. Now we have water. That's nice. We didn't have water for the last 3 years. But things change and you just kind of have to roll with them. And as long as your cup is half full as a small business owner, you're going to do fine. And I think, well, California, my history books on
the business owner, you're going to do fine. I like that.
Well, I mean, you'll find the opportunity, necessity, the mother of invention, right? You just gotta, when you need to find more work and you're your own guy, you're going to go find it.
I remember a long time ago, and I'll just end with this quick story, is that, I was in my 20s, Jeff, and the TV was on in the background. This isn't like I learned this. It was just an awareness. And there was a hurricane someplace. I don't even know where. And there was people on the news, and they were talking about they lost their house, they lost everything. And I kind of glanced at the news and kind of heard that, right? Then the next person was a construction company talking about how his company is doing the very best it ever did. And I looked at that, and I remember in my mid-20s thinking nothing. I looked away, and my thought was, you ready for kind of a weird thought? I just need to figure out how to always be the construction company. So what I was saying is the same thing. And that's been the pathway I followed. What is happening? And I want to tie something in that you said earlier that I thought about that I didn't bring back that I want the audience to hear. I thought it was interesting, Jeff, as you were talking, and we weren't even going that route. You were saying, well, if everything just fell apart, I would still be my own boss. I would do that. It would be just me. And I can have people that have only been in work 1 year, and I have to say to them, well, you got to look at it if you don't get some profitability, and they won't even look at the possibility of the company closing. And I always tell them, if you're so afraid that you can't even say it, you're not looking realistically. And look at it, somebody who's had this company forever, no chance of it closing right now, but casually just said, well, if it happened, this is what. So I think it's for us to realize that we're in an opportunity, and it doesn't have to be just this or just that or this partner or this employee. It's whatever you're doing at the time, what you're providing to the marketplace. And what I loved about having you on the show today, and I knew that would happen, and that's why I asked you, is you brought the humanness into running the company. So you can show the audience, I've been around, I'm doing good. I've been doing this forever. I had partners fall apart. I had employees fall apart, but I still care about people, and I'm still a human being, and it's still about that level of compassion and understanding. And I think that it's good to weave all of that in. So I want to just, I'm running a little bit over, but I want to give you a second. Any two thoughts on things you want to say to the audience on, if you knew then what you knew now, what you would think or do?
Here's a good lead. If I knew then what I know now, I would have hired you sooner. That would have saved some trouble. No. And you've been amazing, and we don't talk hardly at all now. I mean, it's been 8 years you've been on the road, but in those early days and in those stressful times, sometimes you need to reach out. That's a good thing that I would recommend. And, my father-in-law ran a partnership with a guy for 30 years, and he told me about their struggles. And my father-in-law, I said partner-in-law, my father-in-law is different than his partner, just like Mitch and I are different. But we fit together just like he did with his partner. And they were in insurance sales for Connecticut Mutual. So I guess what I would say to people is don't be afraid to reach out to experience. Use history, trust in the cup half full, and feel like you are empowered to realize your dream. Because once you give up your dream, you might as well take a salary job. You're not going to get there. It's a struggle. It's hard. California is a changing environment, which I think will benefit people, but only those who are willing to take that, like I did, take that leap of faith that I'm going to be okay. I can get through this. I just got to work a little harder and, dial it in a little and then wait for the upswing. And I think that just is a cycle of life.
I do too. Beautiful words. Wonderful seeing you, Jeff. Tell Mitch I said hello. I do miss you guys. I miss talking to you and seeing you.
Big
Lauren,
hug.
I know, big hug. Absolutely. Lauren, I'm going to bring you back on to shut us down on this. Wasn't this another fabulous conversation?
It truly was. Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. I mean, if you look at the chat, it's kind of going a little crazy. There are a ton of people just saying, thank you so much. Today has been such a treat. Thank you for your philosophies, and it really goes on. So thanks so much, Jeff. We really, really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, so I want to thank everybody for joining Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Thanks again, Jeff. Lauren, I'm going to let you shut it down, and I will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lori. Bye, Jeff. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everyone, go ahead and check that chat. I listed a link to our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to see any of our latest episodes, or all the episodes, quite frankly, all 60, I believe we're at 63 now, go ahead and click that link. I also have my email address in the chat. So if you'd like to get in contact with, honestly, Jeff or Lori, you can shoot me an email. Thank you, Emma, Kathy, Petra, Anka, B, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week, which is next Wednesday, 10 a.m. for another episode of Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. Take care. Bye.